There are some new developments in the Stormy Daniels scandal. The adult film star taped an interview with 60 Minutes. It's set to air this coming Sunday. Anderson Cooper does the interview from CNN, of course. But there is a report from BuzzFeed suggesting that lawyers for the president may try to stop CBS from airing it. Let's discuss these developments and what happens next with Ms. Daniels' attorney, Michael Avenatti. Good to see you, counsel.
Good morning.
So let's deal with the latest. My understanding is it wasn't going to air this Sunday anyway. It was all about whether or not it happens this week. So there has been no built-in delay because of this controversy. But as far as you know, has anyone from Team Trump tried to stop 60 Minutes from airing the interview?
Well, nothing has been filed as of yet, but we have heard some rumblings that it's expected perhaps this week. I hope we're wrong about that, quite honestly, because I think the American people deserve to hear from her. And quite honestly, we don't understand why all of this effort is being undertaken to silence my client.
Well, and they have concern about recent energy as well, right? Their argument is, why didn't she talk all those years before now? You know, she had this happened, what, back in 2000, whatever. Why didn't she speak before now? Why did it only become relevant about the election? And their theory is it's always been about the money. Your pushback?
Well, it hasn't been about the money. And in fact, had she wanted to sell her story to the highest bidder, she could have obtained far more than $130,000. And I think once and if she's ever able to tell her story freely, the American people are going to conclude.
Why didn't she speak before?
Well, because I think she was respecting the fact that she was going to remain silent. And the problem is that Mr. Cohen, a few months ago, decided to start giving interviews and statements about what had transpired. And that's really not appropriate. It's not appropriate to have one side out there disseminating mistruths, half-truths, outright false statements. And at the same time, Ms. Daniels, Ms. Clifford, is unable to speak her side and explain her position.
Now, look, we go through this on the fact analysis of how it happened because it becomes a matter of veracity, who's telling the truth and who isn't. But the starting proposition that the American people want to know what Stormy Daniels has to say, yeah, that's got to be an open question, counsel, because people know about Donald Trump and his past and his behavior. He was weighed and measured, and they voted for him anyway, the people who put him in office. So, you know, this idea that this will be some kind of truth that people who have never heard before, isn't that going to be a little tough to deliver on?
Well, I don't think so, because there's multiple aspects of this, quite honestly. You have what actually occurred between the two of them, and then you have the efforts to cover it up, including in the waning days of the 2016 presidential election. And then you have what has transpired since then, as it relates to the payment of the $130,000, the refusal by Mr. Cohen and the administration to come clean about what really happened.
But none of that affects you legally, right? This is a contract. The preamble of which, as you know all the paperwork, says that the parties include and among DD, Trump's fugazi name, but really the LLC and Ms. Daniels. And, it was signed by Cohen on behalf of the LLC. And we offer an acceptance. You'll play with the law in California, but basically you had a deal. It was a deal at her urging. The word is that she had been talking to networks, then went to Cohen through her counsel and said, this is what they're going to pay me, $130,000. Can you meet that, or I'm going to talk?
That's false.
So they cut a deal.
That's absolutely.
Well, where would that number come from?
No, that's absolutely false.
So how did it happen? I know you weren't involved at the time, but what's your understanding?
That narrative is completely false, and I think when and if
she wasn't meeting with other news agencies.
She was discussing the opportunity with other news agencies.
So then she wasn't respecting the silence.
Right? No, wait a minute. There was no deal at the time. She was meeting with other news agencies. She was not looking to profit from this, quite honestly. And I think when she's able to tell her story, the American people are going to be able to judge her veracity versus the veracity of Mr. Trump and Mr. Cohen. And we're going to let them decide on who's telling the truth.
Are you worried that because she signed this deal, right, she was then exposed to the components of the deal? One of them was the arbitration. They went to an arbitrator. The arbitrator said, you signed this deal, it's a good deal, and it's a proper deal, not a good deal. And you can't even file this kind of lawsuit. And then she went on and filed it anyway, and now you got this damages mechanism in there. And if you lose on the law, this appearance, everything that Daniels says, those will be amounting different penalties that you'll have to pay. You worried about that?
Quite honestly, no, because that's not what the arbitrator said. And in fact, when Mr. Cohen proceeded in that arbitration, he proceeded under the name of the LLC,
right,
which doesn't even have the right to proceed in arbitration pursuant to the agreement. If he wanted to proceed in arbitration, he had to do so on behalf of Mr. Trump. He did not do so, and I think it's pretty obvious as to why he didn't do so.
Why wasn't the LLC, this may be too in the weeds for people, but just
I think it probably is.
Because the law matters, but the LLC was what brought the action and what he signed as a representative of it. That's who it made from. Where he got his money from is obviously another matter. He says it was from a credit line from his house. But why couldn't he bring this action? That's who signed it, was him on behalf of the LLC. He's the one with the rights.
Because the agreement specifically provided that for this course of action, it had to be DD. And let me also say this, because this hasn't been touched on, and it's critically important. Paragraph 8.6 of the agreement makes it clear that if all parties, DD, EC, and Ms. Daniels, if all parties do not sign the agreement, there's no deal. All parties did not sign the agreement. There's no deal.
What do you think happens next? Do you think we get to see this on 60 Minutes this week?
Well, again, I certainly hope so, because I believe the American people deserve to hear her out. They deserve to know the truth on what happened relating to the payment of these monies, Chris, where they came from. And I don't understand what's so complicated about this. I don't understand why the president cannot come out and state unequivocally, did he know about the agreement? Did he know about the payment? And did he have anything to do with the payment being made? 3 very simple questions. You don't need 140 characters on Twitter in order to answer those 3 questions.
All right. Mr. Avenatti, thank you very much for making the case.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.